ambassadors of the European Union. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure for me to deliver opening remarks at this Creative Finance Virtual Forum, which is the second event under the Kingston Networks of Culture project, which aims to bring together Europe and Jamaica around culture and cooperation. As you know, the European Union is strongly engaged in international cultural relations with programs supporting the cultural and creative sectors in our partner countries. The European Union views culture as a solid pathway to foster human development and economic growth. Culture is also a gateway to promote intercultural dialogue as well as respect for, so we hope, respect for human rights and democratic values. I hope you will allow me to open a tiny little bracket, but an important one, to say that Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine is a clear and unfortunate example of the importance of such intercultural dialogue and how culture should be, can be, a tool to promote respect for human rights and sovereignty, which is needed now even more than ever. As an expression of our support for an enhanced intercultural dialogue, the European Union delegation in Jamaica is supporting Kingston Networks of Culture, which is a little project, but part of a very big global project, which we call the Cultural Relations Platform, that directly supports international cultural relations by connecting the dots across European and global cultural and creative sectors. As a matter of fact, the COVID-19 pandemic has produced complex challenges for the creative and cultural industries. It has also underscored the need to address long-standing issues related to financial inclusion and access to finance for creative practitioners. The European Union wants to address part of these issues by improving the means by which cultural and creative industries stakeholders in Europe and in Jamaica can collaborate on projects, trade, and engage in cultural exchange. And that is why today's forum assembles a range of cultural, creative, financial, and economic professionals to address the key challenges and opportunities related to sustainable creative financing. Let me end by commending the government of Jamaica, Minister Grange in particular, as well as the various cultural and creative actors of the country for the steady efforts which we have seen developing over the years. I hope this forum will help to move the needle forward in a push to strengthen Jamaica's creative ecosystem. Thank you so much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much for connecting our first series of dots with your introduction. And yes, the placement within this very tenuous moment really causes deep reflection with us all and underscores the importance of why we are here and really going for a better future. So we will invite Senator the Honorable 𝗷𝗵𝗙 to bring his remarks.
Forum Chairperson, Mrs. Stephanie Thomas Gilbert Roberts, my colleague, Minister, Honorable Oliver Babsett Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Ambassador Marianne Van Steen, Head of the European Union, Delegation to Jamaica and half of the Caribbean, Dr. Deborah Hincklin-Gordon, Lecturer at the UWI, and Principal Consultant to KNOC, panelists, ambassadors and high commissioners, members of the cultural and creative industries. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to commend the head of the European delegation to Jamaica, Ambassador Marianne Van Steen, for her leadership that has brought together key stakeholders for this discussion on the critical issue of financing for the cultural and creative industries. The value of CCIs to the global economy has been studied widely, and the findings are consistently that the orange economy, as it is sometimes called, is a major driver of the economies of developing as well as developed countries. Clearly, of course, as Ambassador Van Steen has said, culturally linking us together in a way other than just for money and entertainment. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the creative industries generated around 30 million jobs and accounted for about 3% of global GDP, employing more young people aged 15 to 29 than any other sector. Young persons often find it hardest in most economies to find jobs. The cultural and creative industry has been a real refuge for many of our young people. Here in Jamaica, we have a vibrant CCI economy consisting of a community of freelancers, entrepreneurs, operating enterprises, industry representation bodies, and educational facilities. In its COVID-19 recovery task force report, our Minister of Finance reports that in Jamaica, creative goods account for roughly 84.1 billion Jamaican dollars in terms of creative services and employs approximately 3% of our workforce. That's very, very important. In recognition of its strategic importance to the economy, the government has implemented several key measures to remit within the remit of agencies and departments, many of them in my ministry. A film commission was established under the auspices of our investment promotion arm, JAMPRO, to spearhead activities that increase investment, export, and employment in the sector. This has yielded commendable results. Despite the significant pandemic impact, the performance of the creative economy has been very noteworthy. The current CapEx, Jamaican dollar film production expenditure and job figures are the highest recorded since the beginning of the pandemic. In fact, in US dollars in 2021, the value was about $1.088 million. For the current fiscal year, the US value amount is about $3.8 million. The finance minister just announced $10 million, as Dr. Hinkling mentioned a few days ago in his budget speech. Within the Development Bank of Jamaica, there are 2 venture capital funds that can provide near angel funding for CCI entrepreneurs. And we're encouraging people to use these avenues of financing as we try to build this industry to a higher level. Through the Jamaican Intellectual Property Office, JIPO, we have ensured a strong regulatory framework to protect creative content under local legislation such as the the Trademark Act, the Copyright Act, and the Designs Act. There are also international treaties, including the Patent Corporation Treaty, the Hague System, to which we acceded in February this year, as well as the Madrid Protocol, which will come into force for Jamaica on March 27th this year. In addition to these measures, our investment in the sector includes consistent representation to local and international partners for avenues of financial support, as we're aware that one of the ongoing challenges is access to financing. Both the Jamaica Business Development Corporation and JAMPRO have capacity building initiatives which prepare the industry to secure funding through various options, such as partnerships, equity, and debt financing. JIPO constantly engages with stakeholders in the industry regarding utilizing the intrinsic value in their intellectual property as collateral. CCI practitioners should seek, and I want to stress this, when you're starting a business, the press is, how do I get more money? How do I get more market for my products? But really, if more and more we have to educate our entrepreneurs that what you often need is good, solid technical assistance. Now, JAMPRO can provide that, JBDC can do that, DBJ can help you. So find not only money as you search to develop your business, but also find technical assistance, and our international partners can also help. Financiers have traditionally taken a conservative approach to funding the sector. It's risky. However, studies And my many years of banking, I know how risky it can be. Studies indicate that creative trade is less volatile than trade in commodities or raw materials. People don't know that, but it's true. In 2009, when sales from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries recorded a 40% decline, exports of creative goods contracted by a mere 12%. I therefore encourage our commercial banks, our cooperatives, and our credit unions, businesses, and individuals to not only carefully consider business proposals for creative, but also to actively develop loan products specifically with them in mind. The CCI entrepreneurs must be considered. Believe Jamaica's strong and internationally recognized cultural and creative industry has enough seasoned players to lend itself to improved commercial structures that will prove to be attractive to equity investors and to lenders. Our finance minister has just announced that additional equity financing options will be available to MSMEs in the next financial year. Members of the industry should now begin to prepare themselves to take advantage of these opportunities. So, ladies and gentlemen, the world has taken notice of our cultural and creative entrepreneurs across many genres, and there is a potential for them to make further lucrative connections in many international markets. We're therefore looking forward to the outcome of the impact assessment on Jamaica's cultural and creative industry, for which the JBDC recently received approval from Intergovernmental Committee for the Protection and Promotion of Diversity of Cultural Expressions. We believe this assessment will yield a comprehensive profile of the sector, as well as a development strategy to allow us to make even more meaningful decisions regarding the sector. At this business ministry, we're committed to support this industry with the policies, programs, and where possible, the necessary interventions so that our cultural and creative entrepreneurs can thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Senator Hill, thank you. An important call for action for stakeholders in the financial industries supporting creatives. Very important value chain considerations also raised. And there are many links along there that can be connected and that you have really highlighted. So thank you. And it is a pleasure to now invite the Honorable Olivia 𝗍𝗵𝗎 to once again bring us our greetings to us all. Thank you so much for your continued commitment to furthering the initiatives of the ecosystem.
Thank you, Stephanie. Senator, the Honorable Aubin Hill, my colleague Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Her Excellency Ambassador Marianne Van Steen, Head of the European Union, Delegation to Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and the Cayman Islands. Mrs. Stephanie Thomas, and should I say Gilbert Roberts, Co-Consultant and Director of Strategy and Projects, Dr. 𝗍𝗵𝗎 Gordon, Lead Consultant and Lecturer and Coordinator, Institute of Caribbean Studies, UWMONA, esteemed panelists, and I would I'd like to specifically recognize Dr. Hilary Brown from the CARICOM Secretariat and other specially invited guests. Now, this event follows another very successful staging of Reggae Month in February, and even more closely on the heels of International Women's Day, celebrated globally on March 8th. So we're also looking forward to the reopening of the entertainment sector as we get back to business. It cannot be a minute too soon, but we are cognizant that we have to reopen while remaining faithful to established safety protocols. We have to ensure that when we do open up the sector, all stakeholders from promoters, performers, artists, artisans, consumers, and supporters will be in a position to benefit from a reopened market for entertainment, culture, and creative products and services. So this Creative Finance Forum, therefore, comes at an opportune time. What has become known as the pandemic pivot has caused us to do things differently. It has already constrained and curtailed us. However, now is the time to accelerate our planning for a reopened sector. This process must include financial planning and taking stock of where our entertainment, cultural, and creative enterprises are, with a view to determining our new directions. But even beyond the planning required by stakeholders in the industry, it is an excellent opportunity for the entertainment and banking sectors to deepen their engagement and to find ways to ensure that a reopened entertainment, cultural, creative sector provides mutual social, economic, and business benefits. So this is why I congratulate the European Union through their cultural relations platform and the networks of culture team in the staging of the second of 3 events in their Connect the Dots series of themed culture link-ups. Once again, this research-driven Creative Finance Forum brings Kingston as a UNESCO Creative City of Music into focus. I'm pleased to note that the consultants, Dr. 𝗣𝗵𝗲𝗹 and Mrs. 𝗵𝗵𝗔𝗃 of Networks of Culture have made financing the creative sector a central theme of the research process. This complements work that my ministry is doing in fulfillment of the 2005 UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions. As you are aware, Jamaica is currently a member of the Intergovernmental Committee for the 2005 convention and now serves as a powerful advocate for the entertainment, culture, and creative industries, which we refer to as 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃, regionally and internationally. My ministry's involvement in the Connect the Dots series is part of that wider advocacy role that we play. The research process taking place through the networks of culture activity certainly reflects the ministry's ongoing process of connecting the dots in partnership with other ministries, departments, and agencies of government and our stakeholders in this complex regional entertainment, culture, and creative ecosystem. It also responds to a clear goal of my ministry to solidify a policy framework for the 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃. The team at my ministry has continued to work on that process and have our sights set on completing pioneering 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃 legislation and policy in this our 60th year of independence. Moreover, we have been actively involved in establishing sustainable linkages across all of government in support of the 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃s. And this includes direct financial inputs into the sector as follows. The ministry has disbursed 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃 grants amounting to 90 million to cultural and creative practitioners who need assistance as a result of the pandemic. And we are about to disburse 30 million to small entrepreneurs and cultural and entertainment industry organizations. The Ministry of Tourism recently announced that a sum of $31 million has been earmarked in the 2022-23 tourism budget to support Jamaica's creative and cultural industries through the Tourism Enhancement Fund. And the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, led by Honorable Minister 𝗍𝗵𝗲𝗃, is presiding over the research on the economic impact assessment of the cultural and creative industries and the formulation of a fund for the 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃. So we are pleased to have Senator Hill on board today, which is a signal of joined up approaches of government, which will allow Jamaica to build back better, stronger, and even faster than some may anticipate. Jamaica is actively and deliberately taking the joined up approach in connecting the dots of governance to provide a framework for the 𝗖𝗍𝒄𝗃 through which all our stakeholders can thrive. And so at this point, I just want to say that I cannot end without thanking our partners in the financial sector for coming out today to demonstrate their willingness to come to the table with the creative sector to see where we can find points of convergence for mutual growth and development. I must tell you, as a practitioner in the business, for some years, we had difficulty getting financing and we had to mortgage everything we had. So the entertainment, culture, and creative sector is not only a significant growth sector in the present for the region, but also a sector upon which the globe's collective future depends, working together as we can strategize for its sustained growth. So I look forward to the deliberations and most of all, the outcome of our consultations. I want to thank you so much and have a successful forum. Thanks much.
Here we go. Yes, so there are internet problems on this side of the world as well. I'm here in Belgium, and I just got a notification that my connection is a little unstable. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Grange. Complex regional ecosystem indeed. You said it very well. We are looking forward certainly to the sustainable reopening of the entertainment and cultural sectors, the markets that are there. And you have underlined the importance of this collaboration with financial institutions and with the larger investment community, and really understanding, you know, the complexities and taking the time to connect these dots one by one until we can have the growth that we're looking for and that we all embrace. So thank you very much, and it is a pleasure to welcome and welcome again Dr. Hicklin to open the live stream panel discussion that is around connecting the dots, financial consideration for a sustainable creative city of music. So over to you, Dr. Hicklin-Gordon.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. We are going to be jumping right into it, right into a discussion. We've assembled what we see as a panel of experts to take us through the main issues regarding creative financing. What we're calling creative financing, CreaFin, we have abbreviated it to be. And of course, we've already established that the relationship between the financial and creative sectors have always been sensitive, not only here, but across the world. And of course, there's always been a process of trying to bridge the tensions, the differences in thinking, the differences in language, the differences in outlook. And so what we really want to do today is to bring that process to Kingston, to be able to connect the dots literally between creativity and finance. And of course, in that mix is a notion of governance, which very often has to kind of act as intermediary wherever it is necessary. And policy, of course, plays a role in that. Originally, we had identified 3 specific areas. One was the issue of policy tools that would be necessary to further the process of creative financing. The second is the issue of financial inclusion, which is really the means by which the institutions themselves, financial institutions themselves, onboard creatives into the financial system. And the third is the creation of a fund. Those were the 3 areas that we saw as particularly important. Today in our breakout sessions, we're going to be looking at the fund in particular, and we're going to be looking at inclusion, because we know that there is a process of legislative and policy development that is happening within the ministry that the minister spoke about, that is going to be addressing the issues of policy. So the panelists that we've assembled, and I'm only going to name them by name at the moment, and as I introduce each one and we get into the questions, I will tell you exactly who they are. We have Mr. 𝗖𝗍𝗋 𝗧𝗹, and he's out of the ACP. We have Mrs. Mariam McIntosh Robinson, and she, of course, she has a tripartite role today as President and CEO of First Global Bank and Vice President of both the Bankers Association and the PSOJ. Dr. Hilary Brown, who is responsible for issues to do with culture and community in CARICOM. Mr. Ewan Simpson, who is out of JARIA, Jamaica's own Jamaica Reggae Industry Association. Ms. Lisa Harding from the Caribbean Development Bank, and she will be talking to us about the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, CIF. Mr. Andre Gooden from the Jamaica Stock Exchange, Ms. Andrea Davis, who has been involved in the process of policy development and research on cultural and creative industries from the very beginning of cultural and creative industries research. Her publications take you back, and she's now ahead of the game with issues to do with AI and digitization. Mr. Howard McIntosh, who's actually traveling, but is, through the magic of technology, going to join us from somewhere in the Caribbean. And of course, Mr. Robert Livingston, who is the CEO of Skyron Entertainment, and has been known for his work in managing international superstar Shaggy, and taking him to a particular into the stratosphere. Ms. Thomas, I think we have your mic open, so I'm going to ask you, Sansia Thompson, if you could please close your mic, or anybody who can, I don't know if our team can do that. Sansia Thompson. So we're going to start with Mr. Oliveira. Mr. Oliveira is the Assistant Secretary General of Structural Economic Transformation and Trade within the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, the OACPS. And Mr. Oliveira, I want to ask you, in the country in which you now reside, but not necessarily are from, I understand you're now in the DOMREP, which is your country of birth, but Belgian culture agent, a gentleman by the name of Philip Kern, who you know well, tells us that tensions between the financial sector and the world of culture have been characterized by mistrust and fueled by sectors that ignore each other at best or despise each other at worst. Is it still so? And what case can be made for financiers in the Caribbean to kind of consider cultural and creative industries as being important for investment and growth?
Thank you very much, Deborah. Before starting, I just wanted to recognize Minister Hill, Minister Grange, Ambassador Van Steen, yourself, Mrs. Gilbert Thomas, and also the Ambassador of Jamaica in Brussels, my dear friend, Ambassador Simon Beton-Nair. Your question is very interesting, and Philippe and I have worked in the past. Our Caribbean people in general, we are conservative, and bankers are much more conservative. A lot of our people often see culture as a hobby, and it's something that you might do on weekends, and they don't see it as a real business. I believe, and I really liked what Minister Hill was talking about. He gave concrete examples. We have to show to our financiers that culture is a multi-billion-dollar business worldwide. And this business has even expanded during the pandemic, given that Netflix and Spotify, among others, have really taken a huge bite of the market. As a matter of example, for the European Union, it's a $558 billion industry, around 4.5% of the total GDP of the European Union, employing 8.3 million people. This is a study that I'm quoting from the European Union. I think that it's very important that we teach our bankiers to understand what is a cultural industry. This passes a lot by working on intellectual property rights. It passes a lot by putting people together. And things like the Minister Grange was saying, which are still true, about having to go to a bank and people telling you, yeah, it's a great film, it's a good idea, but let me see the deed of your mom's house and then the deed of your dad's house. Things that are really tough to handle. And I was really happy for the introduction of both ministers that really touched this is a very important point. One of the main things that I used to work a lot in the Caribbean before as well, in Caribbean Export, with World Intellectual Property Organization, and making a lot of meetings, getting together with bankiers, understanding how it basically I would say, be able to quantify and understand what is that type of business. Because at the end of the day, and it is a truth for all of us, liquidity in the Caribbean is not necessarily a problem. Most of our banks have a lot of money, but both cultural industries, and I would also like to say also agricultural sector, in which returns take a long time to come, are also not keen sectors for our bankers. So basically, I think it's getting people together, understanding each other, understanding each other's needs, and I would also say believing in yourself. One of the main things that we do have in the Caribbean, which I regret, and in my country we call it the Guacanagarics complex, is that we believe that everything from outside is better than ours. If there will be, let's say, a software developed in Jamaica and a software developed in Europe for the same thing, and even the Jamaican one would be cheaper, our own people would say, no, I will buy the European one. And this is the things that we have to change. We have to believe in ourselves, believe that our people, and we often say that nobody's a prophet in their own land, and this is the case in the Caribbean. Jamaica has always shown the lead. I always say that I'm a big reggae fan, and I believe that Bob Marley is the official music for every taxi driver in the world. I've been in Indonesia, and in the taxi in Indonesia, they were playing Bob Marley. I was in Korea in a restaurant eating, and in front of me was a huge picture of Bob Marley. But it's not only him. There's so many good artists. In the past, working also with Pamela Cook-Hammer from ITC, when we were at Caribbean Export, we brought Shaggy to the Dominican Republic. And that was really good. We do not know our own artists, and we don't value them. So it's not only with the financiers themselves, but I think it has also to be a society that values culture, that values art, and that really gives a place to our own, because our culture is our soul.
Yes,
so,
it seems to me that we actually have to translate some of these ideas into practical programs and projects that will help us to literally and in a kind of in a material way engender this kind of trust and bring into reality some of these issues. These are very important points. And the thing about it is sometimes we see them as kind of esoteric, but we have to find ways to make them material and get people to understand them. I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to move a little to Dr. Hilary Brown. And Dr. Brown is the program manager of cultural and community development at CARICOM. And she's also one of three partners. She's a lead of one of three partners that's bringing forth a project called CreaFin Forum. CARICOM has partnered with the UWI and UNESCO through this program to be bringing an enabling environment to kind of assisting with the process of instituting what is being called an enabling environment in the region. What is that? And can we afford it, Dr. Brown?
Thank you so much, Dr. Hickling-Gordon. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are. From Guyana.
Yes, I'm in Guyana. So thank you so much. Let me first also acknowledge Minister Grange. Always a pleasure to be in a forum with Minister Grange, Minister Hill, Ambassador Van Steen, and our two excellent co-chairs. It really is a pleasure for me to participate in this conversation. And there are so many people on this call who I have worked with in personal and professional capacities. So it's really very heartwarming to see us all here together, bringing our perspectives and our passion and energy for the development of this sector to this discussion. And congratulations on organizing it. So I think in terms of the enabling environment, we know that the enabling environment really is critical to supporting the creative sector. And this is how we really enable creatives, cultural entrepreneurs to grow their businesses, to generate income, to create employment, to export, the whole gamut. And it ranges, and I think in a lot of ways, it begins with a very strong policy framework by government, which then generates and sort of pushes all of the concomitant kinds of initiatives that need to be there to assist creatives. So whether that's the legislation, incentivizing the sector, the financing that we're focusing on here today, the marketing and business support, the training and human resource development, the infrastructure. And we heard Minister Hill speaking quite a bit, some very interesting data that I want to get my hands on, but the research and the data collection is critical. And not to mention that for a sector like this, having a robust intellectual property management structure is critical to protect and also incentivize creative production. And so I think, you know, what I was also encouraged by was the demonstration of that partnership between culture through Minister Grange's remarks and industry and commerce that I heard in Minister Hill's remarks. And of course, we want to see tourism right there in that mix as well, because that is one of our challenges in connecting the dots and in ensuring that we have an enabling environment, an ecosystem that really serves the creative sector, because our policy making is fragmented and the resource allocation, you know, we don't have the level of resources that we need. But if we were to work collaboratively better across ministries and across portfolios, then we're better able to leverage the resources to do that. And also, one of the things I wanted to highlight, because I know very often persons in the creative sector, and myself included, sometimes feel a little disheartened that we seem to have been talking about this for a long time. We seem to have been advocating for this for a long time. Why is it we don't seem to understand, or why we can't get more policymakers on board? But I think we need to appreciate how far we have come. And 15, 20 years ago, we would not have had a forum like this. We would not have had the level of buy-in that we currently have from our political directorate. Our CARICOM heads of government gave their full endorsement to the development of the creative sector at a special engagement meeting in 2015. And in fact, it was through that endorsement that we saw the development of the Creative Industries Innovation Fund, which Lisa Harding, my colleague, will speak to. And our ministers of trade also gave their endorsement and included the creative and the cultural and entertainment sector as one of the 7 priority sectors to be developed within and for which a regional sector strategy was to be written, which was done in 2017, 2018. And we have a regional development strategy for the creative industries, which was led by CARICOM and several others, strategies to export entertainment into Europe, how to better access the economic partnership agreement and so on. So I think we have to recognize that it is by building the capacity, by the advocacy that we have undertaken collectively, and by changing the mindset and increasing that understanding. And, you know, it has been done by the industry actors, by persons in academia, by our government representatives. So collectively, we have changed the conversation. And I think that that is why now we are able to see, you know, you have to change the mindset before you see the funding. And I think we're seeing the progress. It has been slow, but, you know, I have the, you know, the pleasure today really to be able to bring good news about the project that I will speak more to. And so I think, you know, we need to be encouraged. Yes, go ahead.
We'll talk a little bit about the project in our next go round.
Sure.
But I just want to quickly say that very few people, I don't know how many people know that you speak as a creative yourself, and I don't know that many people know that Hillary is an accomplished pianist herself. We move through the region.
Sorry, Deborah, I thought you were going to say an accomplished panist.
Panist and pianist. We've moved through the region to Miss Lisa Harding. And Hillary, Dr. Brown has spoken to us about Miss Harding's role in the Caribbean Development Bank. She is the coordinator of micro, small, and medium enterprise development in the CDB, which has responsibility for the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, the CIF, which has been doing remarkable work through the region. And I want to ask Miss Harding, grant funding has been said to be an always welcome, but a temporary short-term stopgap for creative practitioners. There's always a debate about whether grant funding should be focused towards capacity building or revenue projects. How have the grant funding programs of the CIF been designed and positioned to optimize sustainable small firm growth and revenue generation in the creative sector?
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I just want to, say good morning to everyone and acknowledge the presence of Ministers Grange and Hill and Ambassador Van Steen. I'm really, really happy to be here this morning representing CTB. I'm wearing two hats as the coordinator of MSME development, and as well as representing the Cultural and Creative Industries Fund, which sits within our MSME portfolio. It's a very interesting question, and I have to say that there is no, for us, it's not mutually exclusive. And I will go into a little bit more about why we feel that, capacity building and revenue is, for us, along the same continuum. CIF's mandate is really focuses on improving the competitiveness of regional creative industries, which speaks to sustainable and profitable enterprise. And us at the CDB, our work in MSME development really is about, building sustainable and resilient MSMEs. And part of that resilience speaks to obviously financial resilience, and that's where the revenue projects come into play. However, before we can, you can get there, we see CIF, CIF was designed to address both those aspects, recognizing that there's a critical need for capacity building within the sector. And that capacity building is really more or less a foundation for the CI practitioners to build on, to then access finance, scale their enterprises, and then be able to optimize on the revenue potential that can be generated from those enterprises. So how we have managed to do this is through a very flexible and nimble delivery mechanism, where we have multiple streams of technical assistance and support. So for example, we have, we facilitate the convening of accelerators, and they're really capacity building programs focused, on a subsector level. We work in film, fashion, visual arts, festivals and carnivals, and music. So we can have specific accelerators designed to address specific constraints in those subsectors. But at the same time, we also have some open calls. And more recently, we had COVID-19 response grants, which really, focused on supporting stakeholders who are implementing potential revenue generating projects to give them that additional support to take them forward. So, in a sense, we see CIF as providing that seed funding through grant resources that allows, the sector to really benefit from much needed research and development, prototyping, testing, innovating, really and truly to get them on the right and solid footing to be then before they can access finance or new markets and ultimately begin to see a return on those investments.
Okay.
At the same time, I just also want to mention that we're working with building capacity of staff in financial institutions as well, because we take an ecosystem approach. And we think that is really, really critical as well to help persons in the financial sector to be, better equipped to appraise applications of creative projects, as well as, we also work with varying projects looking at IP protection and so on, and collateralization, which is very, very important to the creative industry sector. And we've been doing some work with JIPO in that regard.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking a lot about some of getting kind of into the nitty-gritty of some of these things in the closed sessions, but we wanted to kind of give an idea of the breadth of issues that we're talking about when we're talking about financial inclusion. So we've been to the DOMREP today, we've been through Guyana, we've just left Barbados, and we're going to come home to Jamaica, and I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Ewan Simpson, who is the chairman of the Jamaica Reggae Industry Association, JARIA. He's also General Counsel of the Urban Development Corporation, and that becomes very important when we move into the second round of questions, which speaks to the city. But with the representative hat on for the reggae industry, in 2017, the Bank of Jamaica, through a National Financial Inclusion Council, launched a national strategy that sought to create the conditions in which Jamaican creatives and other small businesses underserved by the financial systems were able to invest and grow and generate greater levels of wealth. We know that in many of the cultural and creative sectors, there are a number of people who, whether by choice or whether by some form of financial exclusion, are not a part of the individuals who would have been able to access a number of these programs. How has this process of financial inclusion in real life, how has it served cultural and creative practitioners in Jamaica? And are there any examples?
Thanks, Dr. Hickling-Gordon. And let me greet all the erudite persons in this gathering. Let me start with the positive. It is wonderful. It is welcome. It is more than useful. It is a concept whose time had come, and my English are not bad. And so when I say had come, I am being very deliberate, because the concept of financial inclusion has been a part of the challenge that the entertainment, cultural, and creative industries have had for a while in the region. So let me start with saying, yes, I am happy to see that there is this effort that moved forward. However, I want to recognize a few things about it. One, when we look at the composition of the Council for Inclusion, we realize that it has, and rightly so, a strong financial institution angle. But at the same time, I see no representation from the entertainment, cultural, and creative industries sector in what is establishing this entity. And that says that we have not given, we still, 2017 to now, have not given significant pride of place to the peculiarities of ECCIs and why it needs to be treated. Because I'm not even talking about the economic potential yet. I'm just talking about the peculiarities. The fact that it has not just broad impact, but so many peculiar subsectors. And I know my colleague Hillary was mentioning some of them earlier. But if we think about it, we're talking about literary arts, sports, tourism, gastronomy, fashion, music, dance, film, animation, fine arts, photography, graphic art, architecture, technical services. All, I mean, we could go on, and I know we don't have all day. But the point I'm making is, where is that representation when we're talking about inclusivity? When we're talking about looking at what the needs are, that is a challenge. When you look at the objectives, the goals of this inclusion strategy, again, we talk about housing, we talk about MSMEs, and I know I will hear that MSMEs include ECCIs, but I know that I do not have I will not have a lot of pushback from this gathering to say it is important that there is a distinction. There's a critical distinction. So I know you asked me, Doc, to say how it has worked. And but I want to make sure that we appreciate that if the structure is faulty, then the functionality will be faulty. And that is a part of the challenge that we're having. If we are not seeing from the foundation that it needs to be prepared in a manner that can take a 50-story building, then whatever we are going to try to build on top of it is going to topple. And that is a part of the challenge that I'm suggesting that we look seriously at broadening that inclusivity. Because, as I have said in many spaces, and others have said before me and will say after me, the region's greatest competitive advantage exists in our ECCIs. And there's no question about it.
I think we have the exact right person to respond to you, Mr. Simpson, in the person of Mrs. Mariam McIntosh Robinson, who is here as president and CEO of First Global Bank, a banker herself, but also as vice president of the Jamaica Bankers Association, which was integral in the formulation of that plan, and vice president of the PSOJ. So, which it's always interesting to note that there are many creatives who, although in business, don't recognize themselves as members of the well, if not members, but part of the private sector. So I'm going to
want to call it an identity crisis either, right?
So I'm going to ask Mrs. Robinson, Mrs. McIntosh Robinson, this pushback that Yuan has brought to the table, the complaints of being underserved and experiencing challenges in accessing finance, from stringent collateral rules to compliance challenges and even perceived discrimination. What in your mind are the main issues? What are some of the prescribed solutions from the perspective of the banking and private sectors?
Thank you, Ms. Hickling-Gordon. So good morning, everyone. I just want to say a special good morning to Minister Grange and Minister Hill, Ambassador Van Steen, to Steffi. I know Ms. Thomas Gilbert Roberts as Steffi, so I can't call her anything else. And of course to you, Deborah, and everyone here. Congratulations on this event, the second in the series. And it really is my pleasure to be here representing the JBA, Jamaica Bankers Association, the PSOJ, and of course, First Global Bank, part of the Grace Kennedy Group. Now, thank you for being so clear, open, and direct about just the concerns. I must say that this whole goal of financial inclusion, which is really a national strategy, is the passion of our Minister of Finance, and the full sector supports the vision that both the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Jamaica has around ensuring that we get as many persons in Jamaica who are not yet banked or who are underbanked into the formal financial sector. And that's not just for banking. When you're in the formal sector, you get to take advantage of pension, you get better investments, you can borrow better. So there are a lot of benefits beyond just having a bank account. But specific to the creative sector, which is why we're here today, I think the world is changing. Certainly for me as a banker and my team, we feel very passionate about the fact that traditional banking is over. We have to think of ourselves as a consumer products company offering a banking service. And as a result, we have to make it as easy to access and as convenient as possible. But quite frankly, for SMEs, one of the biggest barriers is access to capital. And that's where banks come in as well as funds. We are capital providers. So what are we doing specifically as an industry? And my bank is no different in terms of addressing, because I love to talk, but I like to be like, come on guys, what specifically are we going to do about this? How are we going to phase this in? I'm very proud to say that we are one of the first institutions, and others have followed, to offer what we call simplified accounts. So if you're in the creative industry and you are a one-person show, or you are a business, you can open a simplified bank account now with just an ID and your TRN, a government issued ID and a TRN, and $100. If you're an SME, a business, which is probably more applicable here, you can open a simplified business account. We actually were the first to launch that late last year. That is very revolutionary, because before, to open an account, I think somebody said it earlier in the panel, we asked for not an organ of your body, but we asked for a lot. But for business accounts now, you just need a business registration TRN, of course your ID, 1,000 Jamaican dollars, and voila, your account will be opened. Now here's the catch. To get these simplified business accounts, if you're an SME, so if you're a business, you can only have $250,000 at any one time trading for your account. So the volume that you can have is up to $250,000. And that's the way in which the sector has been able to take a risk-based approach to really try to simplify the account opening process. Now, if you want to have more than 250,000, hopefully you've started to develop a good relationship with your banks, demystified who we are, and then you add a few more account opening requirements to step up to what we call that regularized account. So I just wanted to say that the industry is shifting, and I think there's a recognition, and if for no other reason, COVID has shown that for us in this world to get ahead as best as possible, we have to work together and really understand points of difference. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to understand points of difference so we can come to points of understanding to say, how can we make it happen? So those are two tangible things that the banking sector has done in the last 12 months. I'm not saying we're there yet, but at least we've taken some steps. And by the way, for those in the creative sector who have businesses, when you open these accounts, there are no minimum balance fees. There's no point of sale account fees. I know fees is a big topic right now, yes. But on a serious note, that was also taken into consideration. I just want to end on one thing, because I know we'll come back to this, on the question about how to access financing now. So I've spoken to you about how to access the sector, how to open the account. And with that, you get your Visa debit card. For example, from us, you get online access to the banks to be able to do, wire payments, check balances, etc. So you can conduct business. Now, when it comes to financing, one of the comments about businesses like the creative sector, BPOs, agriculture, is that the bank said, but where are your assets? Because we like to just lend based on assets. We're really supposed to be lending based on cash flow. So there are two things that are happening in the industry. Number one, the banks have stepped up their game, or at least we'd like to think so. Please continue to give us feedback. But we've stepped up our game to really understand the industries that we're serving. And you see it in the products that we're developing. No longer is it an SME product that's broader, you come to us. We're being very targeted about the types of situation, the businesses that we are lending to. And we use the Development Bank of Jamaica to offer partial guarantees. In fact, the DBJ has a number of products that is actually very helpful to help SMEs to get to the next level, especially in the beginning. At First Global Bank, we have an early start financing program. If the business is in operation for a day to 24 months, you can access up to 15 million Jamaican dollars right? It's partially guaranteed by DBJ. And I only share that example, not really to big up FGB, but to say that the banks are putting their money where their mouth is. So I'm just trying to give you specifics about what is happening in the sector. The second thing, and I see Miss Lisa Harding was on earlier, the second thing I must say is that there is a project sponsored by IDB, CDB, 𝗣𝗲𝗃 is project managing, where we recognize, and I really congratulate these organizations for coming to the banking sector. We need to find a way to have IPB collateral, right? And so there's a multi-year project that has kicked off, I think it was late last year, around how we can get IP asset lending, right? So collateralization of IP. And you know what the biggest issue is that we're working through and we'll have to work through is how you create a secondary market for IP. Because once someone comes to us, right? Obviously, a musician who's done well, there's IP there. The bank should be able to take that as collateral. What you'll hear from the banks is, well, if the loan goes bad, we can't trade that asset. And so one of the biggest things that we have to do is create that secondary market for IP. And then that will allow us, once we do that, I think it's going to take off even more. But ahead of that, I've told you some of the things, the steps that we're taking. And as a banking sector, not just me personally, we're very committed to financial inclusion. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to come back around to it because, I know that I see definitely chomping at the bit in terms of watching the time, but there's so much information to be had. We're going to move to Andrea Davis, and then after that, we have a recording from Howard McIntosh from somewhere in the Caribbean. But I want to ask Andrea, you wrote one of the earliest plans for what we now know as cultural and creative industries development, and it was based on inclusivity from a Jamaican perspective. Andrea Davis, of course, is the CEO of Jamaica Arts Holding and the brain behind International Reggae Day, which is held in July. And your early plan, it was based on inclusivity and has become globally popular in the discussions that we're having in 2022, these issues of exclusivity. What does an inclusive cultural and creative ecosystem look like? And I suppose the question that I'm asking is, are creatives even trying to become a part of the financial sector? Do they really want to be?
Well, let's take it from the top, and greetings to ministers here present, Ambassador, my distinguished panelists, and thank you, Dr. Hickley and Ms. Stephanie for having me on. As you said, before there was a there, we were there. And as a practitioner in the industry, my journey started first by understanding the creative legacy that Jamaica has established in the world and that global appeal that goes far beyond our borders, and our ability to produce and to innovate not only one, but several genres of music out of this little place called Kingston, which makes Kingston rightfully so, not only the home of Jamaican music, but a UNESCO city of music. And it was as a soundtrack to our culture, to our people, to our identity, but also a lifestyle that has been able to integrate the many faces of Jamaican creativity, from fashion to dance, from visual arts to culinary arts, and how we are able to wrap that in a package that allows us to monetize and gain not only brand value and promotional value, but economic value. And to the extent that our homegrown creative entrepreneurs, from Miss Lou, the mother of the culture, to Studio One's Cox and Dodd, which is the home of Jamaican music, and the Motown for Jamaican music, to Perry Hensel, the father of Jamaican film, to Bob Marley, the king of reggae music, and the first artist to really invest in the music in terms of not just his career, but establishing the infrastructure around which he could have a legacy that 40 years later is still generating millions of dollars on an annual basis from that intellectual property, from those image rights, from that catalog that continues to be managed. That human creativity and that culture has been the canvas on which we have an opportunity to forge a different economic direction. And what for me has been one of the challenges over the years has been the fragmentation that has been consistently hampering both the industry's approach to itself, as well as the public sector's approach to facilitate the industry. And so I've been really heartened this morning to hear the contributions of both ministers, as well as Ms. McIntosh from the bank in particular, as well as Dr. Brown, in terms of the steps that are being created, the tools that are being created. The first draft of the 5-year plan for music and entertainment in Jamaica that was done in '97. When we met with the banks, we were basically dismissed. The idea of using culture, creativity, entertainment, any of those tags were not appealing, understandable. They weren't willing to even make the effort to understand. As a matter of fact, in 1994, when International Reggae Day was launched, even our approach to the Jamaica Tourist Board was rejected because reggae wasn't deemed the thing that was the channel to be used to promote Jamaica. And so we have seen a very drastic change in the environment, and the mindset and the will is the first frontier to conquer in this journey. So very heartened to see that by 2008, there was the birth of a reggae month, grown out to the blueprint of a reggae day, into 2015 when UNESCO designated Kingston as a music city, and of course the reggae designation in 2017 as an intangible heritage product. We have seen a mindset shift in the ecosystem, both locally and overseas. And so it is a timely opportunity for us now to turn inward and look at how we can find ways to create capital for an industry that is very capital intensive and until now has been suffering from the gap that exists between capital and culture. So, kudos to Minister Grange and her ministry for all the extensive work being done on all fronts to position this industry and to facilitate this industry. But the ecosystem in terms of inclusivity needs to first begin with the industry itself, who needs to look at ways to strengthen its infrastructure, to be effective in its lobby, to diversify the participation, because funding for music is difficult. Go down the tier to dance and to theater and to art and to other areas of CCI, it becomes even more dire a story. So strategic collaborations and developing an action plan and the infrastructure, both physical and institutional, to be able to connect the dots, as you so aptly termed this series. And congratulations to you for making this initiative possible and your funders for supporting. The idea of the industry being able to identify its agenda in order to work with government and work with the financial institutions and NGOs and private sectors to materialize some of these opportunities. So obviously, in terms of facilitation, the government of Jamaica and participating NGOs have been fundamental to creating that enabling environment everyone speaks about, where everything from venues to education and training need to be prioritized so that we can facilitate the sustainable growth of this industry. Incentives, both financial as well as policy directives, legislation to protect IP, the establishment for the endowment for the arts, because obviously financing takes a number of channels. It requires not just grant funds and loan facilities. It also requires investment opportunity and our ability to build the financial and digital intelligence necessary for the CCI practitioners to come to the table to financial institutions and be able to leverage that IP, I think is a broader part of government's responsibility to advance the industry. And of course, as we enter this age of digital transformation, that financial intelligence and as well the access to broadband, the access to technology, as well as the access to technical assistance that can be facilitated through government are very important in terms of including those who have been marginalized, engaging those who have been working outside of the system. For the most part, in Jamaica as well as the Caribbean, the story of the creative has been a journey of one. And so this time when we are looking to connect dots and create collaboration and create facilities that can incubate as well as propagate the natural raw resources we have as a creative and innovative people, I think is essential. And that private sector in particular begin to look at the creatives not as ornaments, but as partners, to be respectfully sitting at the table to give us an opportunity to build on brand collaborations, because the resonance that our products come with, the transferability that the creative output offers, has been used in other parts of the world by brands very successfully to deepen their penetration in the market. And Jamaica should be no different in terms of its collaboration with content. So we want, in an inclusive environment, to see more effort to meet us halfway, right? We may not have all the language, you may not have all the understanding, but more effort, as I hear the bank making, much appreciated, because it's important for us not to see the gold in the distance and turn our backs because we don't understand how to get there. It's how do we build a path to get there. So our creativity and our innovation is a competitive advantage, not just for Jamaica, but for the Caribbean. And industry development and resource management are essential, but those things take investment, it takes infrastructure, and it takes a plan. So that meaningful engagement that we need for the economic success of CCI and its commercialization through entertainment in this information age is going to be facilitated by forums like this. And I hope more than just the talk of it, that we put our money where our mouth is.
Absolutely. We're going to jump very, very quickly. Thank you very, very much, Miss Davis, to Robert Livingston. We're cognizant of time, and I hear step in my ear. I told you 1 round. But we're going to try to see if we can get a couple more questions in before we end. Robert Livingston, you have managed money. You will see. You have seen money. You have been involved in the making of money through this very business. Yet still, there is an idea that creative practitioners are not savvy with money. There's this notion that we don't manage money well. Is this true? And why is it said? What do you believe to be the real situation with creatives and money?
Thank you very much. I want to recognize Minister Grange, Minister Hill, and Ambassador Steams. Of course, managing money is a big part of the problem we have in the industry, because sometimes you make decisions that really based on where the business is going. And it's a business that you can lose a lot of money also. You have to be willing to separate where your heart is and what is in the perfect talent. Sometimes we Jamaican, or we in the reggae business, seems to lean more to where our heart is and what we believe in. It's a business. We got to go to where the talent takes us and where the industry is going. And what industry are we trying to get into? What genre are we trying to sell our music to? We're confused sometimes in the business. Sometimes we want to go into the R&B, sometimes we want to go pop, sometimes we want to go dance, or we're not sure where we want to go sometimes. So we seems to all over the place and trying to find our market. And that's how we actually get confused and waste money. For me, I recognize what I wanted to do quickly. From my experience being in the business, traveling, touring with other bands, seeing their mistakes, and try to figure out, okay, how can I get the real investor to believe in my product, not in my artist, but my company? Because if you invest in talent, sometimes you just don't have a firm organization. You have to set your body and your organization strong. So even if you have one talent that failing, you could sign another one that move the others. Push everyone, help each other. And of course, I'm welcome to see all these changes. I didn't know this will happen in my lifetime, to see banks and other financial institutions are supporting our industry. Of course, I have to give a lot of respect to Minister Grange to actually organize us and put us in a more understanding direction. And you and myself and even Andrea, we speak a lot about different things and support. And of course, it's really a big breath of fresh air to hear this and actually be a part of this panel to even talk about this. But of course, we have a long way to go. And our industry are full of people who are not willing to understand what they need to do and what they need to do to move forward, even for this financial institute to believe in them and support them. And there's a lot of work need to be done on that section, not only in the talent, not only in the recording industry, but the development of these people mind and where the market is. Of course, I would love to see Jamaica have a major record label, one company in Jamaica that just put out the biggest stars and much more artists that are ready to go out in the world. Of course, we're all over the place still, and we need more support to actually dictate to where a lot of these talent need to go to. So the financial institutional people not gonna support or give us finance the way we should. Music business is a big business. You cannot go in it with small money. This is a big money business. If you wanted to create superstars, you have to spend big money. So if the bank and the financial institute are coming in this, they gotta prepare to spend some serious money. Because this business takes money. And you can lose it in the blink of an eye. Of course, I'm saying this from my experience. And at the time when I was doing it, it was physical. Now it's digital. You can make more, but you can lose more. Because the expectation of the talent, they spend a lot of money on clothing, spend a lot of money on lifestyle. Remember, most of the people who are in the industry are from the reject society. They had nothing. There's not much educated people who went to university and being in this business. This business is for the people who are coming from the reject society, if I may say so. So they have a lot of needs and wants before they even start making money.
Am I hearing Mr. Livingston say that we have to find specific ways to deal with the sector as a unique and specific sector in terms of monetization and financing?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. The last person in the round, and Minister Grange is going to wants to make an intervention. I'm going to ask Mr. Gooden to tell us about the route to from startup to publicly listed company. Because we have a number of organizations in the cultural and creative industry, 3 or 4, that have made it, who have taken their companies through this route. And then we're going to do a very short kind of second round of questions after we hear from the minister. Mr. Gooden, who is the Group Business Development Manager at the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Tell us quickly how about the route from startup to publicly listed company for creatives.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. Good morning to the ministers. Good morning to Ambassador 𝗏𝗏 twice in 2 weeks. Happy to be here with you. Deborah, when you get to the stage where you are considering going public, Marianne has pointed out some of the things that have to happen to be part of the financial sector. To be onboarded, so you have a small intervention of 250,000 beginning. That is the beginning stage, to be able to get yourself formalized. You have to, the players in the industry have to formalize themselves. And the script I'm reading from really is the same script for the creative industries, for small, for medium, for architects, for anybody, right? If you're going to seek capital on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, what is happening really is that the public is investing in you. The public has to be made comfortable with your story. And your story has to be credible, it has to be organized, and it has to be structured in such a way that people feel confident enough to place their hard-earned capital into your business. So for that to happen, what do we require? You have to have a structure. Whether it is a 3-man business that you have, or it's a 1-man business that you have to have a business plan. You have to have a credible business plan. I mean, if you can look at a white wall and turn it into a beautiful mural, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can also create a business plan, etc. So you have to use your own creative talents, but you also have to partner with institutions or individuals who can put you in a position to become a credible business. So you have to have a proper plan. You have to have a governance structure. One of the requirements for being on the stock exchange is that you have to have a proper government structure in place. You have to have an audit committee, a finance committee. A corporate governance has to be in place. Now, I don't mean you have to have a board of 50 people, but you have to have a structure in place. You have to be able to report your finances, very important, Deborah, on a quarterly basis, because investors are driven by information. So if you can, you're mandated to produce quarterly financial statements on how your company is doing. So that
is our market ready? Is the creative market ready for this?
Well, there we go, Deborah. There has to be a trust factor. And we know the creative sector, generally, they don't trust the formal sector too much. And they try to find their own means of financing their businesses, which can work to a certain level. But when you get to the level where you paint one mural and it's beautiful, you paint another one and it's beautiful, and you now have 50, and you're getting demands now from large organizations for your service. Those organizations want you to be a tax compliant person. They want you to be of a certain level of competence in terms of corporate governance and in terms of reporting, for them to be able to comfortably take you on as a business partner to move their business to the next level. So regardless of the sector, creative or otherwise, you really, when you get to the level where you're a public company, Deborah, the governance and the expectations move to a different level.
I'm tempted to say, and that's where the fight started.
Right.
But
right.
we're going to come back. Yes.
I know you're not going to have a time for us to go back to the second one, but I want to mention one of the things that the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange is doing.
Okay.
You remember now the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange is actually in a project with IDB to train at least 150 social sector organizations to go out there and to deliver capacity building to all entities that are interested in entrepreneurship and to formalize themselves. They're talking about mentorship, how to write a financial report, how to market your business, how to present it as a give it the appetite that to appeal to the appetite of investors. That is one. The Jamaica Social Stock Exchange I want to mention, 𝗔𝗍.com. Right now, the Agency for Inner City Renewal of our good friend, the great Dr. Henry Morgan, has a project in the Agency of Inner City Renewal. They're calling the Jamming Project, which is a project in Trenchtown, the home of reggae music, where they are seeking a small amount of money, $6 million, to train young men and women to participate in the music sector, in the side of the business which is underrepresented, which is the sound technicians, the studio engineers, the audiovisual people, the background musicians. Train them in that side of the business with a view to giving them self-sustainability as participating in the sector in a more formal way. That project is ongoing now at the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. It is on our platform, 𝗔𝗍.com. Anybody willing to participate in assisting us in raising that $6 million to make that project a reality. When that project is listed on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange now, Deborah, the Jamming Project will have to report quarterly on their performance, so that other investors will look at it and say, okay, this is now from a business. This is not a little hustling anymore, and you move it to that level. So the opportunities are out there, but the individuals in the creative sector have to put their trust and faith in persons who can carry them to that next level, and the opportunities will flow from that.
Interesting. I'm going to invite Minister Grange, who had a comment that she wished to make. And then, unfortunately, I'm going to have to kind of choose two questions for us to close off this session because of the time constraints. Minister, can I invite you to?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deborah. You know, Jamaica is as culturally rich as it is diverse, and has given the world's cultural heritage, music, language, unique festivals, art and craft, film, and so much more. And when I listened to the interventions, I felt that it was necessary to complete, because I had shortened my presentation this morning. And there's so many things in my presentation that would address some of the points that were raised here, that, you know, I thank you for the opportunity to just make reference to some of these. So I want to say we begin with becoming strong in data. And Jamaica Creative in my ministry will anchor this, building on what is available, and will maintain the database. We must leverage the technology for marketing and exporting our services and products, as we have done more strategically during the pandemic to propel and sustain resilience in the ECCIs, because we have reached larger markets and larger audiences in the virtual space. And we have impacted. And for example, in Reggae Month in February, we had millions tuning into our presentations. So we will likewise continue to support bringing greater structure while strengthening and widening the digital and physical infrastructure for the 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧s. In terms of structure, as it relates to the industry, the pandemic, the provision of COVID-19 grants to practitioners within the entertainment, culture, and creative industries brought necessary relief, but it also had the benefit of transitioning practitioners from the informal economy into the formal economy through registration on our entertainment registry. We now have a fantastic database of persons in the sector because they were required to be members also of an industry organization. And we have several industry organizations. We have 𝗤𝗂, of which Ewan Simpson, who is in this forum, is the chairman of 𝗤𝗂. We have the Jamaica Federation of Musicians and Affiliated Artists. We have Jamaica Vintage Association. And so every individual who got a grant had to register on the e-registry and had to be a member of one of the organizations. And it was not just for music and entertainment, but for the arts, for animation, for the visual arts. So when we know who you are and where you are, we can support your growth, your development, your innovation, profitable movement in the global arena. As for digital infrastructure, our administration is currently supporting the accelerated build out of broadband. And my ministry is a part of the effort to build a national business portal, which will provide a robust platform for providing relief and incentives to the 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧s and other industries in an integrated and seamless way. In parallel, we are providing entertainment zones. I recently announced Port Royal as an entertainment zone where we have at least 5 facilities at which we can have events and have events round the clock. And also the National Stadium complex, where that is being declared an entertainment complex. So we're going to solarize the National Arena and the Indoor Center. So electricity costs will be reduced. And so promoters can use these facilities in a more effective and efficient way. There is much more to come. And in the short term, we will also have entertainment districts. So on the North Coast, we have identified areas that would be designated entertainment districts. We need to and will be working in a focused and integrated way to establish a network and architecture locally, regionally, and internationally to serve as resilience and crisis management centers for culture, like is being done for tourism. It must be a space that nurtures innovators. It must have incubators for new and emerging creatives. It must be a space for research and policy development, as well as capacity building in the 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧s accessible to our MSMEs. We need new thinking and new approaches. What we're doing, we are actually establishing an insurance policy for the 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧. We're talking about, we have just actually secured the services of an actuary in this regard. I just want to quickly go, it would be remiss of me not to thank our international partners, the EU and UNESCO, with whom the ministry has been working on 4 major projects for Jamaica and the Caribbean to develop our 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧s, and which I oversee as chairman of the Jamaica National Commission for UNESCO. So I referenced earlier the development of 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗧 legislation. There is the development of this legislation, which is led by an activity funded by the EU and facilitated by UNESCO through its expert facility on cultural governance. We have established a national team and related subcommittees comprised of stakeholders from the 𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗃. The networks of culture activity continues to build on the mapping research produced by the JBDC last year through their research on creatives' financial inclusion and access to finance, digital integration, status of the artist, and Kingston as a creative city of music. The regional project, Creative Caribbean, funded by the ACP and the EU, managed by a partnership of UNESCO, CARICOM, and the University of the West Indies. We're not short of structures, trust me. And then there is the Transcultura project, another EU-funded UNESCO activity. It continues to build capacity and provide training for creative practitioners here in Jamaica through the UWI Open campus. So a lot of work is being done. There's a lot of structures being put in place. In fact, the National Entertainment, Culture and Creative Industries Council, which we now call Jamaica Creative, was set up in my ministry, where the secretariat is about bringing all of this together. The sector is spread over 5 different ministries, and we trip over each other trying to do things, and sometimes doing the same things and not wisely spending the funding that is made available to us. So this council is here to bring it all together in this ministry, which is responsible for the development and the expansion of the entertainment, culture, and creative sector. And when I speak of that, I speak of sports as well, because sports is entertainment and sports is physical culture. So here we are coming together. What we need to do is truly connect the dots and to see how we can spend the funding wisely rather than doing the same things all over again in little various entities doing things when we all need to just bring it together. I think the series of forum here, connecting the dots, it is powerful, and we need to make sure when we're through with all of this that we truly connect the dots. So I just wanted to, I'm very passionate about this. I mean, I must say to Robert, his intervention took me back into the days when I was managing a stable of artists with my partner, Clifton Specialist Dylan. And Robert, we worked very closely together. When the banks were not as receptive, but one bank was, Eagle Commercial Bank. And we were able to get things done because they had faith in us. We had an impressive cash flow. But in the business, they say you have to fake it till you make it. And so we had to create this hype. And when you create this hype, it doesn't mean that you are making money, but it means that you are building the base. So what I did in those days and others, build the base for what we are talking about today. But somebody has to have faith in us, to invest in us, because we are investing in human resource, human beings, and we are not short of talent. So I'm very passionate about this. I hope I haven't overstayed my time.
Not at all. Who have ears to hear, let them hear, Minister. And so there, I have to make a Solomon move at the moment. There are questions for everybody right across the board, but I'm going to only ask 2 to close this session. And the first is of Dr. Brown, for her to expand a little bit in terms of the details of the project of Caribbean Creative, that you spoke of, Minister. And the second will be of Mrs. Robinson. Indeed, a lot is happening. It's really for a strategic network of activities to be brought together within the framework of policy to guide us forward, Minister. Thank you for all that you do. So I'm going to start with Dr. Brown. We're going to end with Dr. Brown. And then Mrs. McIntosh Robinson to tell us a little bit about Creative Caribbean.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deborah. This has been really a very rich session, and thanks, Minister Grange. That was a serious sort of roundup of where we have been and where we need to go to. So very quickly, I have the pleasure to share the information on behalf of all the partners. This is a project that is being implemented by the ACP Secretariat, and SCPON is here online, with funding from the 11th European Development Fund, and then being implemented in the region by UWI, CARICOM, and UNESCO. It is essentially coming out of an envelope of 40 million euro. 3 million was carved out for the region. And so that is what is going to be made available to creatives in the region in 14 member states of CARICOM and implemented over a period of 40 months. I think you'll be very happy to hear that there is a requirement that at least 75% of the funds must be made available in grant resources directly to creatives and operators in the sector. And I think, the title of the project is Creative Caribbean, an Ecosystem of Play. And I think in developing that project, all of us who brainstormed around it really sort of co-opted this concept of, and perhaps by the end of Creative Caribbean, we will be speaking about the play economy rather than the orange economy and all of the other ways in which we speak about the creative sector. So recognizing that incredible strength and the richness of the diversity and the innovation, the prolificness, the resistance, the expressiveness that runs through all of the creative expressions in the region, played en masse, and we all have masquerading traditions from John Canoe to, of course, Trinidad and Tobago perhaps has perfected the export of the concept, but we all have masquerading traditions right through the Eastern Caribbean, and here in Jamaica, Bahamas, John Canoe as well. So it really builds on that. The project also builds on all of those studies and all of the consultations. We have consulted and creatives in the region have given participated in consultations and given ideas and so on. So there's a lot of what collectively we have all put in over the years that is reflected in this project. And so the core activity within the project is grant making. And there will be 3 types of grants: enabling environment grants, which will cover things like national artist registries, which Minister Grange just referred to, data collection, strengthening cultural policy, legislation, creative cities is in that as well, institutional strengthening of various kinds. There are also industry grants. There's a special focus on festival development and strengthening our festival economy in this project. And of course, I'd love, if I had more time, I would speak a little to CARIFESTA, which I have responsibility for through CARICOM. But there is also, there will be grants for artist mobility, for product and content development, to scale business ideas, to support professional associations of artists, which we know is a critical part of the ecosystem that needs strengthening in the region, as well as professional work placement, enabling artists to go and understudy and participate. And then, of course, wrapping up, a number of consultancies that will help to strengthen that ecosystem, give us the model legislation so that we can have all of our countries, including Jamaica, give us that Creative Industry Development Act, as well as all of the data collection and establishing a creative content hub and a range of other activities. So we're really looking forward to the grant calls will launch by next month, we expect. And so we just want to encourage everybody to look out for that. We know that, we're happy for grant funding, but I'm happy that this forum will also speak to developing a long-term permanent fund, because ultimately that's where we are. And really, in that sense, building out and sustaining the Creative Industries Innovation Fund, which we already have under CDP.
Fantastic, Dr. Brown. Thank you very much. And just to kind of wrap things up, I think we need to kind of be very clear as we close off the issues that that there are some unique elements. I think you spoke to it about the cultural and creative industries that we want our financiers to be aware of when they're making decisions in terms of coming to the table with the creative process. So, for example, our processes, our products and services are not largely demand driven. There are unclear supply chains. A lot of that has been described today. Minister actually described the process of faking it till you make it. And this is a part of the business model of many cultural and creative industries. How does that stand up to issues of risk? Mrs. Robinson, Mrs. McIntosh-Robinson, how are we going to overcome some of these tensions for structure, you know, and some of those softer areas?
Okay, and I'll try to be brief. I know we're wrapping up. So on the risk side, so the regulatory environment for banks have moved from being prescriptive to everyone taking what we call a risk-based approach. And what that means is that we have to truly understand the businesses instead of being told what we can lend to and what we can't lend to, which is good. When I heard Minister Grange talking about Eagle and the businesses back then, the reason why they were able to do it is because they took the time to really dissect and understand the business, understand what drives the cash flows, understand where the risk is, and then you're trying to mitigate for those risks. And so the good news is that the banking sector is moving to that, and there are two specific ways of evidence. And the one is the banks have recognized that we have to do capacity building. We recognize that pretty early actually for us, but what does that mean? A lot of the banks have these resource centers. So for SGB, it's SME Hub. I think for Sagicor, Resource Center. For JMMB, it's something. I know BNS and NCD also have. And these are usually easily accessed. You can access it easily on their websites. I think that's important because the financial institutions used to say, you come to us when you are investment ready, when you're ready to accept capital. And what we've recognized is, well, since it's a very formulaic process, we need to go out to our population and say, here's what we need, here's how to get yourself capital ready. And it's both on the bank side. And, you know, I was an equity investor for 7 years and we had to make the market. There's a lot of good businesses out there, but we just have to understand. So that's number one. The second way in which we're dealing with risks is to break it down to needs. So the products that you're seeing for us, we have an early stage financing. That is actually very remarkable. It means you can actually be in business for a month and come to us for up to $15 million. And so you're going to see the banks doing more of that because we're not going to do equity, although it's like pseudo equity, but we're saying we need to give you a shot to get to that next level. And we put aside a pool of capital that says, if every loan we made to this early stage business went bad, this is what our non-performing loan ratio would increase to, and we're okay with that. So you've seen a lot more of that happening as well. And it's not just the creative sector. We have the BPOs where you want to build out a space. You don't have any collateral. Well, we'll lend you based on cash flows because we understand your business is in the contracts, not the property that you have. So you've seen a lot more of that with the banks. The final thing I'll say, this IP project that we're doing, you know, yes, it is multi-year. Please look out for that and ask about how that's going. And hopefully we'll be doing a communication strategy. I say we loosely because I'm not leading it at all, a participant as a bank. But I think that progress of how we can use IP as a source of value to allow people to, again, get capital to further grow their business is a big one. So as a group here, we should, you know, reach out and ask how it's doing, because I think that's going to be important, including the digitization of IP. And I think with the digital currency that the central bank is pushing, all of that is going to allow more access. And access is good for sectors that have been underfinanced for too long. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody. I think Minister raised your hand.
Just want to make a quick intervention and to say to Mrs. McIntosh-Robinson, I'll be in touch with you. I must tell you that I don't know if you knew 𝗏𝗏𝗪𝗏, but 𝗏𝗏𝗪𝗏 was with Eagle Commercial Bank, and then he actually went to First Global.
That's right.
Right. He was the banker who had faith in us. And from what you're saying, I think, Mabel, maybe your bank is a bank that we could engage in discussions with. But I just want to say that we're about to give small grants to the organizations and small operators in the sector, COVID grants. So for example, to build capacity, like 𝗤𝗲, we're going to give them funding over the next few days to build capacity. And I want to encourage them to also go and do the governance course at PSOJ, which we did when we established JCAP, which is Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers. We went and we did the governance course at PSOJ. And I don't know if JCAP is still a member of the PSOJ, but I'm encouraging business entities within the creative sector to do the governance course and to become members of the private sector organization. I just wanted to make those comments.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me just say, Stephanie, that it seems to me that we have a series of these activities that we need to be doing to connect the dots. I am really sorry that we couldn't get to the second round of questions for everybody, but it is very clear that there's a great deal of coordination happening through the ministry of all of the activities that are happening across the sector. I want to thank everybody for participation, for participating. I think it is important now that we move all of our processes, public and private, from coordination to strategy. I think that is where we have an issue that we need to now, we need to connect those dots. We move on to the next set of activities.
Yes, so thank you very much, Dr. 𝗔𝗀 And this has been a very informative session. So I thank each and every panelist for the time that you have taken to create these things. And just to underline that this is a series of events, and many of you will be engaging to partner with us in the final event so that we can go even deeper as we unearth the challenges, opportunities, and these can be showcased in the wider event that is coming up at the end of March. So I want to, point out that in the chat, we have a survey that we would kindly ask everyone to give us some feedback on. This feedback helps us in our processes in the future and to better be able to understand your perspectives. So we really encourage you to take a moment and complete the survey, as well as we have put the link to the cultural relations platform. And I'm going to close by just going back a little bit about the project. So Kingston Networks of Culture is an activity of the European Union funded project, the Cultural Relations Platform of the Service of the Foreign Policy Instruments of the European Commission, Brussels, Belgium, a project that directly supports intercultural relations and cooperations between European and global cultural and creative sectors. So we are very pleased to be able to have this conversation today, moving the needle on creative financing. And so for those who have joined us on live stream, we also invite you to fill out an evaluation, which will be placed there, and to continue engaging. This is moving the needle on where we are connecting a few more dots. And the more we do this is the further along we get in the process. So thank you all to our distinguished guests, honorable ministers, Her Excellency Ambassador Von Steen. Thank you so much for the facilitation of this event. We are going to segue into closed sessions now to take a closer look at some of the issues that were brought to the fore. We're going to be having two panels, one that's looking at the development of a possible dedicated fund for the creative industries, and the other that's going to look at financial inclusion. And so for those of us who will be joining us in those sessions, we look forward to hosting you there. And we're going to move right along to that as, of course, we have exhausted our time in this session. So, but thank you very much. And we hope for you every wonderful thing, health and safe days. So thank you. and have a good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be.
Gracias, abrazos a todos.
Thank you.